The last delivery. Miss it, and he'd lose everything. His job, his room, his only lifeline in a city that had already taken too much. But then he saw her, alone, lost, ignored by everyone else. Leo, I just can't leave her here. He knew the cost. He knew this one act of kindness could break him. But as he reached for her trembling hand, a question hung heavy in the icy air. Was he saving a lost old woman, or was this the moment his own life would shatter completely? What would you have done in Leo's shoes? We all face moments that test our humanity. Follow Leo's journey to see where this single choice leads him, and share your own thoughts in the comments below. We believe every story of kindness deserves to be heard. When the biting chill of early winter met the crushing weight of survival, would an unexpected decision at a bus stop be the last light at the end of the tunnel, or would it plunge Leo deeper into despair? The wind, sharp as a shard of ice, whipped Decorativno Leo's face, making his eyes water. 18 years old, and life already felt like a relentless climb up a frozen mountain. His breath plumed in the frigid air as he pedaled his mother's old bicycle, its protesting creaks and groans, a familiar melancholic soundtrack to his days. Each rotation of the pedals was a small victory against the gnawing hunger in his belly and the looming dread of the rent payment he couldn't make. This last delivery of the day, a small, unassuming package tucked into his worn satchel, was his only lifeline. If he was late, Mr. Henderson, his landlord and part-time employer, had made it explicitly clear, no pay, and his room would be gone by morning. The bicycle, a seasoned veteran as he sometimes wryly called it, was more than just transport. It was a legacy. His mother before sickness had stolen her vibrant laughter, had ridden it to her own cleaning jobs, her spirit unbent by hardship. Kindness, Leo. She'd often say her voice, a warm melody against the harsh realities of their life, is the only currency that never loses its value. Remember that always. And he did. Her words were an anchor, a moral compass, in a world that often felt adrift and indifferent. He rounded a corner, the tires skidding slightly on a patch of slick pavement. And there it was, the desolate Willow Creek bus stop, its faded paint and cracked bench, a testament to forgotten routes and dwindling passengers. And standing there, a solitary figure against the fading light, was an elderly woman. She was impeccably dressed, even to Leo's untrained eye. A fine wool coat the color of pale honey was wrapped snugly around her, and a silk scarf patterned with autumn leaves peeked from her collar. Her silver hair was neatly coiffed, though a few errant strands had escaped dancing in the cruel wind. But it was her eyes that caught Leo's attention. They were a startling blue, yet clouded with a profound confusion, a lostness that seemed to swallow the fading daylight. She clutched a small, elegant handbag to her chest, as if it were a life raft, muttering softly to herself, words too faint for Leo to catch, though he thought he heard a name, Daniel, and a street, Willow Lane, repeated like a mournful refrain. Leo slowed his bicycle, a knot tightening in his chest. He knew that look. He'd seen it in his mother's eyes during her worst days. Vulnerability. Fear. He dismounted, propping the bicycle against the graffitied wall of the bus shelter. As he approached, the old woman looked up, her gaze unfocused. "Excuse me, ma'am," Leo said gently, his voice soft, despite the cold that made his teeth chatter. "Are you all right? Are you waiting for someone?" She blinked as if surprised to see him to be seen at all. "Oh," she murmured, her voice a delicate, papery rustle. I seem to be a little turned around. This isn't quite where I meant to be." She gestured vaguely at the bleak surroundings. Then her eyes landed on Leo's bicycle. A flicker of something, perhaps amusement, or just another wave of disorientation crossed her face. My, she said, a faint smile playing on her lips. This two-wheeled contraption looks as though it might have served in some war or other. Leo couldn't help a small, tired smile in return. Yes, Mom, he said, his earlier tension easing just a fraction. It's a seasoned veteran of our family, you could say. The brief moment of lightness passed, and the worry returned to her eyes. I need to get to Oak Hill Drive, she said, a note of desperation creeping in. But I can't seem to remember the way. Oak Hill Drive. Leo knew it. It was on the other side of town, miles away, a neighborhood of sprawling mansions and manicured lawns, a world away from his own cramped, cold room. The package in his satchel suddenly felt like a lead weight. The last delivery. Mr. Henderson's stern face swam before his eyes. His job, his shelter. He glanced around. A few cars sped past their occupants, cocooned in warmth, oblivious. A couple hurried by on the sidewalk, heads down, lost in their own worlds. Everyone seemed to ignore the lost old woman, a fragile statue in the encroaching gloom. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. Kindness is the only currency. A wave of conflict washed over him. He had to make that delivery. But how could he leave her here alone, confused as night descended? He looked at her, at the fine lines etched around her worried eyes, the slight tremor in her gloved hands. She could be anyone's mother, anyone's grandmother. Oak Hill Drive is quite a ways from here, Mom, Leo said carefully, especially with this wind. He noticed a glint of gold at her collar, an exquisite lapel pin shaped like a tiny, intricate leaf. Part of it was obscured by her scarf, but he could just make out the raised lettering of an address beneath the leaf's stem. With a gentle, respectful touch, he asked, "May I, ma'am?" and carefully shifted the scarf. There it was. 12 Oak Hill Drive. The address solidified his decision, a silent confirmation of her need. He took a deep breath, the cold air searing his lungs. The delivery. His room. The consequences were stark, immediate. He looked up at the darkening sky, a silent, desperate plea escaping him. "Mum, if I really end up sleeping on the streets tonight," he thought, a touch of grim humor lacing his despair, "at least I'll have quite a story to tell the stars." He turned back to the old woman, a newfound resolve settling in his young heart. "Ma'am," he said, his voice clear and steady now. "My name is Leo. It would be no trouble at all for me to see you home. Oak Hill Drive isn't too far. If you don't mind a bit of a ride on a seasoned veteran." A fragile, grateful smile bloomed on her face, chasing away some of the shadows. "Oh, Leo," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You are a true gentleman." He helped her adjust her scarf. Then, with surprising strength, born of a life of fending for himself, he carefully helped her position herself so she could hold on to his shoulders much like a child might. The package in his satchel was forgotten, its deadline irrelevant. There was only this moment, this unexpected detour, this silent call he couldn't ignore. With a final determined push, Leo set the old bicycle in motion, its creaks now a quiet counterpoint to the Anvong, Soai Kam Shuk, and Chuoks Loi. Beating in his chest, heading towards an unknown destination and an even more unknown future. On the arduous journey to an unfamiliar world, would kindness be enough to light the way when the harsh darkness of reality loomed at the end of the road? The old bicycle, burdened with its precious unexpected passenger, protested with a symphony of groans as Leo navigated the cracked and uneven sidewalks. Each push of the pedal was an act of will. Ms. Eleanor Vance, as he now knew her name to be, from the lapel pin clung to his shoulders, her slight weight a constant reminder of the detour his life had just taken. The wind, no longer just nipping, had turned into a biting assailant, carrying with it a cold, persistent drizzle that soaked through Leo's thin jacket and chilled him to the bone. He tried to shield Eleanor as best he could, with his own body angling himself against the worst of the weather. Are you warm enough?" Miss Vance Leo called over his shoulder, his voice strained against the wind and his own exertion. Her reply was a muffled sound lost in the folds of her scarf, then a little stronger, a bit brisk, dear boy. Reminds me of Scotland. Or was it Daniel's? His windy kite. Her voice trailed off a wisp of memory, dissolving into the damp air. Daniel. The name again. Leo filed it away, a small piece of the puzzle that was this elegant, disoriented woman. Oak Hill Drive was still a long way off, and the drizzle was threatening to turn into a proper rain. They passed under a flickering streetlight, and Leo saw Eleanor shiver. He stopped briefly, took off his own threadbare woolen cap, another gift from his mother, and gently, respectfully tried to tuck it around Eleanor's exposed ears under her silk scarf. She didn't protest, just offered a faint, almost childlike sigh. They approached a particularly steep incline, a hill that even on a good day would have tested Leo's strength. He stood on the pedals, his leg muscles burning, the bicycle groaning in protest. Eleanor, perhaps sensing his struggle, patted his shoulder lightly. "Young man," she said, a surprising spark of humor in her voice, "if we conquer this hill without summoning a helicopter, I shall knight you, Sir Knight of the Bicycle." Leo managed a breathless chuckle. "I shall strive my utmost for that title, ma'am," he panted, redoubling his efforts. Just as they neared the crest, there was a sudden jarring lurch. The chain on the old bicycle had slipped. Leo brought them to a wobbly halt, his heart sinking. Of all the times. "Oh dear," Eleanor murmured, her voice laced with concern. Leo quickly dismounted, steadying the bicycle and helping Eleanor to her feet on the wet curb. "Just a small hiccup, Miss Vance," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He knelt in the damp, his fingers already numb with cold fumbling with the greasy chain. He patted the frame of the bike. "Come on, old friend," he muttered under his breath. "Don't tell me you want to go on strike at this moment, too." After a few tense minutes, wrestling with the cold metal, he managed to coax the chain back into place. As he worked, he noticed a small silk glove lying on the damp pavement near Eleanor's feet. It was exquisitely made, the color of cream, with a tiny, almost invisible letter, D, embroidered near the cuff in a darker thread. He picked it up, its fabric, surprisingly delicate against his calloused fingers, and tucked it safely into his pocket, intending to return it. The rest of the journey passed in a blur of aching muscles, biting wind, and the growing darkness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the character of the neighborhood began to change. The modest, tightly packed houses gave way to sweeping lawns and properties hidden behind tall hedges and wrought-iron gates. They had reached Oak Hill Drive. Number 12 was a mansion, a veritable castle of stone and dark timber, set far back from the road, its windows like dark, unblinking eyes in the gloom. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather crept over Leo. This wasn't just a house. It was a fortress, imposing and somewhat melancholic under the weeping sky. As Leo wheeled the bicycle up the long, curving driveway, the massive front door opened, spilling a rectangle of warm yellow light onto the glistening stones. A tall, impeccably dressed man, with a severe but concerned expression, emerged. This had to be Arthur, the name Eleanor had mumbled alongside her address. Arthur's eyes first went to Eleanor, a wave of profound relief washing over his features. Then his gaze shifted to Leo, still straddling the battered bicycle rein, dripping from his hair. his clothes soaked. Arthur's professional composure barely masked his surprise. "So this is—" Arthur began, his voice a low, cultured rumble, his eyes taking in Leo and the bicycle with a mixture of astonishment and dawning understanding. "Madame Vance's special emergency transport for this evening. Very unique. He was so kind," Arthur Eleanor said, her voice weak but clear, as Arthur gently guided her indoors. "Mr. Leo. He brought me all the way." Arthur turned back to Leo, his expression softening with genuine gratitude. "We've been worried sick, young man. Please come in. Get out of this dreadful weather. Let us offer you something warm, some dinner, perhaps." Leo shook his head, a deep weariness settling into his bones. All he wanted was to go back to his own small room, however cold and bare it might be. "No, thank you, sir," he said, his voice hoarse. I'm glad Miss Vance is home safe." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small silk glove. "She dropped this. I believe it's hers." He handed it to Arthur. "Please just make sure she rests." Arthur took the glove, his eyes lingering on the embroidered D for a moment before nodding slowly. "You are a remarkable young man, Mr. Leo. Madame Vance is very fortunate you were there. Are you sure I can't offer you anything? A ride home, at least?" "No, really, I'm fine," Leo insisted, already turning the bicycle. "The ride back will warm me up." He managed a weak smile, then, with a polite nod, he began the long, solitary journey back across town, the image of the grand, silent mansion imprinted on his mind. It was well past midnight when Leo finally reached his street, his body an aching symphony of exhaustion. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy with a damp chill. He trudged up the rickety wooden steps to his rented room, his hand reaching for the familiar loose doorknob. It didn't turn. Confused, he tried again. Locked. Then he saw it. A piece of paper, stark white against the dark wood of the door, secured with a single rusty thumbtack. His heart plummeted. With trembling fingers he pulled it free. The scrawled, impersonal message hit him like a physical blow. Rent overdue. Locks changed. Henderson. Beneath the note, piled haphazardly on the damp landing, was his meager collection of belongings. A threadbare blanket, a change of clothes, a couple of worn books, and a small framed photograph of his mother, her smiling face, looking up at him from the cold, unforgiving wood. He sank to his knees, the fight draining out of him. He had helped a stranger, and in return the world had slammed its door in his face. He was alone, homeless, with nothing but a bicycle, and the chilling certainty of a long, cold night ahead on the unforgiving streets. The price of kindness, it seemed, was far steeper than he could ever have imagined. When the last door slams shut, can the warmth of human connection be strong enough to dispel the night of despair and awaken forgotten bonds? The city, once a backdrop to Leo's quiet struggles, now felt like a vast, indifferent labyrinth. Each gust of wind seemed to mock his predicament, pushing him further into the shadows. His meager belongings, clutched in a bundle, offered little comfort against the encroaching cold and the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. Despair, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of his resolve. For a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to sag against a grimy brick wall, the fight nearly extinguished. Then the image of his mother's resilient smile surfaced in his mind. She had faced worse always, with her head held high. He straightened, a flicker of that same quiet dignity rekindling within him. He wouldn't break. His wandering feet, almost of their own accord, led him towards the familiar, albeit dim glow of Miller's groceries. Mr. Miller, the proprietor, was a man whose gruff exterior was legendary, but Leo had also witnessed rare, fleeting moments of his underlying kindness. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot he had. The bell above the door tinkled a weary welcome as Leo stepped inside. Mr. Miller, a stout man with a perpetually furrowed brow and flour dusting his apron, looked up from sweeping. His gaze, sharp as always, took in Leo's dishevelled appearance and the bundle in his arms. Well, look what the cat dragged in, and then apparently dragged back out. Again, Mr. Miller grumbled, though his eyes held a flicker of something less severe. You look like you've wrestled a badger and lost son. Leo managed a weak smile. Something like that, Mr. Miller. I lost my room. Mr. Miller leaned on his broom, his expression unreadable for a moment. Henderson Wright figured as much. Man's got a heart like a rusty bear trap. He jerked his head towards the back of the store. Storeroom's empty tonight, except for a few sacks of potatoes that won't complain. There's a pile of old blankets in the corner. This deluxe suite, he said, a dry humour lacing his tone, might not be 5-star, but at least the rats here are considerate enough not to snore loudly. He then disappeared for a moment and returned with a thermos and a lumpy sandwich. Got some leftover soup. And don't tell anyone I gave you my lunch for tomorrow. Overwhelmed by this unexpected generosity, Leo could only stammer his thanks. Tucked into the relative warmth of the storeroom, surrounded by the earthy scent of potatoes and old cardboard, he ate the sandwich and sipped the hot soup, each mouthful a small miracle. His mother's words about kindness echoed, and for the first time that night, a fragile sense of peace settled over him. He wasn't entirely alone. Before exhaustion claimed him, he thought not of his lost room or the biting cold, but of the old woman with the lost eyes, hoping she was safe and warm. He had done the right thing. That at least was a comfort no locked door could take away. Meanwhile, miles away in the opulent silence of the Vance mansion, Miss Eleanor Vance was slowly surfacing from the fog of her confusion. Arthur, ever attentive, had helped her into a comfortable armchair by a crackling fireplace, a soft cashmere throw draped over her lap. He recounted with gentle precision how Leo had found her, the long journey he had undertaken, his polite refusal of any reward, and how he had returned the small silk glove. Arthur handed it to her. Eleanor stared at the glove, her fingers tracing the delicately embroidered D. A choked sob escaped her. "Oh, Arthur," she whispered, tears welling in her clear blue eyes. It was Daniel's. His favourite glove. The pieces of her fragmented afternoon clicked into place. Daniel. Her beloved grandson, her sunshine snatched away in a senseless accident 5 years prior. Today, this very day, was the anniversary of that unbearable loss. The weight of it, the suffocating loneliness she battled daily, had crescendoed, leading her to wander out in a daze, seeking solace in places that held his memory. Places like the old Willow Lane Park, near the bus stop, a place they had often visited. The young man, Leo Arthur, continued softly. He was most respectful, madam. He seemed genuinely concerned. Eleanor clutched the glove to her heart. A stranger, a boy no older than Daniel would have been, had shown her such selfless compassion on a day her own heart was breaking. And there was something about him, a gentleness in his eyes perhaps, or the quiet strength in his demeanour, that had pierced through her grief-stricken haze. A new resolve, fierce and urgent, ignited within her. "Arthur," she said, her voice regaining some of its customary command, though softened by emotion. "You must find that boy for me, mobilize the entire search party if you must, and bring some hot chicken soup. He must be cold and hungry." She paused, a thoughtful frown. "And cookies. Definitely cookies. Daniel always loved cookies after an adventure." Arthur, though accustomed to Madame Vance's occasional eccentricities, recognized the depth of feeling behind her request. "I'll do my best, madam. But I have very little to go on, just his first name, Leo. and a general description. He helped me, Arthur. He noticed me when no one else did. We must thank him properly. Early the next morning, Arthur began his search. He started at the bus stop, a futile endeavor. He then thought of the landlord Leo had presumably been trying to appease. A few discreet inquiries led him to Mr. Henderson's building. Henderson, a sour-faced man, grudgingly admitted to evicting a young black man named Leo the previous evening for non-payment. He offered no further information, clearly irritated by the inquiry into the fate of a tenant he considered a deadbeat. Arthur then decided to canvass the local small businesses, hoping Leo might have sought temporary work or shelter. He described Leo to a series of indifferent or unhelpful shopkeepers. One rather cynical former neighbor of Leo's, when Arthur asked if she knew a kind young black man who used to live nearby, snorted. "Kind, you say? Around here, everyone claims to be kind, until the debt collector knocks, sir. Good luck with that." Discouraged but not defeated, Arthur was about to try another street when he spotted a small, old-fashioned grocery store, Miller's Groceries. Something about its unpretentious facade gave him a sliver of hope. He stepped inside, the bell tinkling, just as Mr. Miller was setting out a tray of fresh bread. "Good morning," Arthur said, his voice polite, but carrying an undertone of urgency. "I'm looking for a young man. His name is Leo. When the door to a new world opens, can pride give way to a life-changing opportunity? And can two souls from vastly different walks of life find common ground?" The bell above Miller's Groceries tinkled again, and Mr. Miller looked up from behind his counter, a questioning eyebrow raised at the sight of the impeccably dressed Arthur filling his doorway. Leo, who had been diligently sweeping the floor, paused, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. Arthur's gaze found Leo immediately. "Mr. Leo," he said, his voice polite but firm. "Madam Vance has been asking for you. She would very much like to speak with you. Would you be kind enough to accompany me back to the house?" Leo stared, broom forgotten, in his hand. Miss Vance wanted to see him. After last night, after the eviction, the world felt like a precarious place, and sudden invitations from billionaire's assistants were not part of his known universe. "Me, sir?" he stammered. "But why I didn't do anything special?" Mr. Miller, overhearing, let out a snort. "Didn't do anything special, son. From what this gentleman told me, you basically rescued a queen from a dragon, or at least from a very confusing bus stop. Go on now. Don't keep the lady waiting. It's not every day a chariot awaits." He winked, nudging Leo forward. Still hesitant, but swayed by Mr. Miller's gruff encouragement and Arthur's patient insistence, Leo found himself seated in a car far grander than any he'd ever been in heading back towards the imposing gates of 12 Oak Hill Drive. This time in the daylight, the mansion seemed less melancholic, more like a sleeping giant bathed in the pale winter sun. Arthur led him through vast, echoing hallways, past rooms filled with antique furniture, heavy tapestries and paintings that looked like they belonged in museums. Leo, despite his awe, walked with a quiet dignity, his earlier weariness replaced by a nervous anticipation. As they navigated a particularly long corridor, adorned with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow them, Leo couldn't help but whisper to Arthur, Arthur, will I need a map to get around in here?" Arthur allowed himself a faint smile. "Don't worry, Leo. We have internal tour guides, should you require one." He was ushered into a sun-drenched conservatory, a vibrant oasis of green plants and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the bleakness of the world outside. Ms. Eleanor Vance sat in a comfortable wicker chair, a soft shawl around her shoulders, a book lying open in her lap. She looked different today, more composed, the deep sadness in her eyes softened by a gentle warmth. As Leo entered, she set her book aside, and a genuine, welcoming smile lit up her face. Leo, she said, her voice clear and kind. Thank you for coming. Please sit down. Leo perched awkwardly on the edge of a cushioned chair opposite her. Arthur told me what happened last night. About your room. She began, her expression full of concern. I'm so terribly sorry, my dear. Had I known... It's not your fault, Mum, Leo said quickly, a flush rising on his cheeks. Perhaps not directly, she conceded, but your act of kindness towards me inadvertently led to your hardship, and that weighs heavily on me. She paused, her gaze searching his. Leo, what you did for me yesterday. It was more than just a ride home. You showed me compassion when I was at my most vulnerable. You reminded me of someone very dear to me. Her voice caught slightly. My grandson, Daniel. He had your eyes, I think. That same honest, kind gaze. Leo listened, his heart touched by her sincerity. He had expected perhaps a formal thank you, a polite dismissal. Not this. Not this raw, open honesty. Therefore, Miss Vance continued, her voice regaining its strength. I would like to offer you a place to stay, Leo. Here in this house. There are more rooms than I could ever possibly use. You would have warmth, food, comfort. I would see to it that you have everything you need. Leo was stunned into silence. A place to stay, here in this palace. His mind reeled. It was an incredibly generous offer, a lifeline thrown to him when he was drowning. But a voice, a stubborn whisper of pride, rose within him. He wasn't a charity case. He didn't want to be a burden, a kept boy living off the kindness of a wealthy stranger, however well-intentioned she might be. The memory of his mother's fierce independence, her insistence on earning every penny, resonated strongly. Ms. Vance, he began, choosing his words carefully. That is incredibly kind of you. More than I could ever expect. But I can't accept. I need to stand on my own feet. I need to find work. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, a thoughtful expression on her face. She didn't seem offended, but rather intrigued. I understand, Leo, she said softly. I admire your spirit, your self-respect. She leaned forward slightly. Then let me propose something different. Not charity, Leo, but an opportunity. Her eyes sparkled with a new energy. I have long harbored a dream, a project to give back, to help young people who have potential, but lack a path to support those who, like me, have known loneliness. But an idea without action is just a whisper. I am an old woman, Leo. My energy wanes. I need someone with youth, with integrity, with a good heart, and a clear head to help me bring this vision to life. She smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. Consider me investing in the most promising startup I've ever seen. Your startup of kindness, Leo. I want you to stay here, yes, as my guest, but also as my associate. I want you to continue your education. I will fund it. And I want you to work with me to help me shape this foundation. Your perspective, your experiences would be invaluable. Leo stared at her, speechless. This wasn't what he had expected. An opportunity. A chance to learn, to contribute, to build something meaningful. It wasn't a handout. It was an invitation to partner, to grow. He saw the sincerity in her eyes, the genuine respect she was offering him. It was a path, not a gilded cage. His internal struggle was brief but intense. The fear of the unknown battled with the allure of this incredible prospect. His pride wrestled with the pragmatic understanding that this was a chance that might never come again. He thought of his mother's words. Kindness is the only currency that never loses its value. And here, it seemed his small act of kindness was being offered a chance to multiply, to be invested in something larger than himself. He took a deep breath, the scent of blossoms filling his lungs, chasing away the last vestiges of the cold street. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, but firm with a newfound resolve. If you truly believe I can be of help, if I can study and work and earn my place, then yes, I would be honored to accept your offer." A radiant smile spread across Eleanor Vance's face, a smile that seemed to light up the entire conservatory. "Oh, Leo," she said, her eyes glistening. "The honor, my dear boy, will be all mine. We have much work to do. From the seeds of kindness and opportunity can a radiant future blossom, bringing peace not just to one, but to an entire community." The Grand Vance mansion, once a place of quiet sorrow and imposing silence, slowly began to breathe again. Laughter, a sound rarely heard within its walls, for years now echoed softly through the hallways, often originating from the sunny conservatory, where Leo and Miss Eleanor Vance spent hours discussing everything from his challenging college textbooks to the latest bird sightings in the garden. Leo, true to his word, threw himself into his studies, his sharp mind eagerly absorbing knowledge. He became an invaluable, albeit informal assistant to Arthur, his quiet competence and willingness to learn earning him the stoic man's respect. But his most cherished role was that of confidant and companion to Eleanor. Their bond deepened, evolving from benefactor and beneficiary into something akin to grandmother and grandson, a tapestry woven with shared stories, mutual respect, and a deep, abiding affection. Eleanor, in turn, found a new sparkle in her eyes, a renewed zest for life that Leo's youthful energy and unwavering optimism had reawakened. Together they laid the groundwork for Eleanor's long-held dream. They named it the Willow Light Fund, a tribute to the Willow Creek bus stop where their paths had improbably crossed, and to the illuminating power of a single kind act. Its mission was simple, yet profound, to offer a guiding light to those who, like Leo, possessed potential but lacked opportunity, and to provide comfort and dignity to the elderly who might otherwise be forgotten. During one of their early board meetings, a small gathering of trusted advisors Eleanor had assembled, Leo presented a thoughtfully researched proposal for a youth mentorship program. Ms. Vance listened intently, a proud smile playing on her lips. "A wonderful idea, Leo," she declared when he finished. "So practical, so full of heart. Perhaps we should also appoint you Minister of Bright Ideas for the Foundation." The room chuckled, and Leo, though slightly embarrassed, felt a surge of purpose. The Willow Light Fund wasn't just Eleanor's dream anymore, it was becoming his too. The fund's first project was the renovation of a dilapidated community center in one of the city's underserved neighborhoods, transforming it into a vibrant hub with a library after-school tutoring, where Leo often volunteered, and a warm space for seniors. They helped a young single mother pursue her nursing degree while ensuring her child had quality daycare, and they funded music lessons for a gifted teenager whose family couldn't afford them. The ripples of their shared endeavor began to spread. Leo, meanwhile, flourished. He excelled in his business and social work classes, his lived experiences giving him a unique perspective that impressed his professors. He dreamed of one day managing the Willow Light Fund, ensuring its legacy would continue to grow, a beacon of hope fueled by compassion. One afternoon, a small human interest story appeared in the local online newsfeed, profiling the Willow Light Fund and its inspiring origin story, featuring a smiling photo of Eleanor and a poised, confident Leo. Miles away, in a cramped office, smelling of stale coffee and regret, a man scrolled through the news on his cheap tablet. It was Mr. Henderson Leo's former landlord. He froze, his eyes widening as he recognized the young man in the photo, the one he had so callously thrown out into the cold. A strange, uncomfortable feeling churned in his gut a mixture of disbelief and a faint, unfamiliar pang that might have been shame. He quickly scrolled past, but the image and the story of kindness rewarded lingered unpleasantly in his mind. Several years passed, seasons turning the gardens of the Vance mansion from a riot of summer color to the quiet beauty of winter snow and back again. Leo, now a young man on the cusp of graduating with honors, was an integral part of the fund's operations, his insights and dedication shaping its compassionate outreach. One crisp autumn afternoon, Eleanor and Leo sat on their favorite bench overlooking the rose garden, a comfortable silence between them. "You know, my dear," Eleanor said softly, her gaze distant, "Daniel would have liked you immensely. He always championed the underdog just like you." Leo's heart swelled. "Coming from you, Miss Vance, that means more than you know." "Eleanor, Leo," she corrected gently, as she often did. "After all these years, surely we are Eleanor and Leo." He smiled. "Eleanor it is." Later that week, Leo found himself with some rare, free time. He got on his old bicycle. He still kept it a meticulously maintained, a cherished relic, and rode. He didn't consciously decide his destination, but his wheels, as if guided by memory, led him back across town towards the Willow Creek bus stop. It looked different now. The city council, perhaps inspired by local improvement initiatives, partly spurred by the Willow Light Fund's quiet influence in community advocacy, had renovated it. A new shelter stood freshly painted, the bench repaired, and a small community notice board was neatly arrayed with local events. Leo leaned his bicycle against it and sat on the bench, the place where his life had taken its most unexpected turn. He thought of the cold, the fear, the desperation of that night, and then the profound, life-altering kindness of the woman who had seen him, truly seen him. He felt no bitterness, only a deep, abiding gratitude. On his way back, he stopped by Miller's groceries. Mr. Miller, a little grayer, but his eyes just as sharp, was arguing good-naturedly with a supplier. He spotted Leo, and his face broke into a wide grin. Well, Mr. Future Philanthropist himself. Mr. Miller boomed, wiping his hands on his apron. "Don't tell me you're here for a sweeping job. Or do you still remember the taste of my old bread, or is it all fancy feasts and caviar for you now?" Leo laughed, a warm, easy sound. "Mr. Miller, your bread is still number one in this city. I guarantee it. And I'll always have time for a chat with you." Though he added a twinkle in his eye, "I confess I've gotten a little better at figuring out which fork to use at those fancy dinners Eleanor sometimes hosts." Mr. Miller chuckled, clapping him on the shoulder. "You done good, son. Real good. Your ma would be proud." As Leo rode back towards Oak Hill Drive, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows, he knew Mr. Miller was right. His mother would have been proud. He had found more than just a home. He had found a family, a purpose, and a profound understanding that sometimes the greatest fortune isn't about what you have, but what you give. And it all started with a choice, a simple act of noticing someone in need and the willingness to ride a little farther than he'd planned on a cold winter's night. The journey had been long, but the destination, this peaceful, hopeful present, was worth every single step, every single pedal stroke. And so a single moment of seeing, truly seeing another human being, didn't just change one life, but rippled outwards, warming a corner of the world that had perhaps grown a little too cold. Leo's journey from a desperate night to a purposeful dawn reminds us, doesn't it, that the most profound connections can be forged in the unlikeliest of circumstances, and the greatest strength often lies in the quiet courage to extend a hand. Perhaps there's a lost soul in our own lives, someone whose story we haven't yet taken the time to notice. What quiet acts of kindness, what small gestures of connection could we offer today that might unknowingly sow seeds of hope for tomorrow? This story resonated deeply with us, and we imagine it might have touched you too. If Leo and Eleanor's journey sparked a thought, a memory, or even a question within you, we'd be honored if you'd share it in the comments below. We truly believe that every perspective enriches the narrative of human kindness. Your insights and even your critiques help us grow and bring more meaningful stories like this one to life. If this story warmed your heart alike, would mean the world to us, and if you feel it might inspire someone else, please don't hesitate to share it. And of course, to continue exploring these journeys of the human spirit with us, do subscribe and ring that notification bell. We have so many more stories waiting to unfold, filled with lessons, empathy, and the surprising beauty of unexpected connections.